Well, good morning. It's good to be with you, and good to have some of Harold's family with us. Good to have you in town, and good to see you. We are just shocked by the news from Al and Pam and the loss of their grandchild. Just can't believe that. This morning, you might remember they just moved into a new house a month or so ago. And I have their new address just this morning. So I will post that both on the bulletin board when I can, and I will send out an email for anyone that would like to perhaps send a card or a thought there. We were requested by one of our members to move the Lord's Supper towards the end of service that would accommodate that member, that they could take it at home. And so we're happy to do that. It's a little different being up here so early in the service. But I got my timer going, so I'll try to get my times down as best I can. But what I want to do this morning is I want to get back into our Confidence series. I say Confidence series. It's a series on the origins of life. But what it is, it's about putting that confidence in our faith in God. In Him as the creator of all around us. Putting that confidence in our faith in the Bible and in Jesus Christ. Because we, as Christians, especially our young people, are being attacked and bombarded and made fun of as if we are foolish to believe that all that came about was from God. But I hope that you see in this series that there's an incredible amount of evidence for believing in all those things and believing God, the Creator. So last time we were talking about this explosion that we are told is the explosion that created our universe or universes. And I want to just kind of another step in that. As today we're going to talk about the design of the universe. In other words, as we look out at space, the stars, the planets, sun, the moon, all that, what does that tell us about how this all came about? And so as we talk about the design of the universe, like we wanted to do so often, we want to look at one passage to start that really hits upon the theme of this lesson. And this morning, it's from Psalm 19 and in verse 1. Psalm 19 and verse 1, where the psalmist writes these words. The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of His hands. That's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to look at the heavens and let them speak for themselves. Let them tell the glory of God and the work of His hands. One of my favorite hymns, I believe it's hymn number 2. I didn't take the time to look it up. But it's Praise Jehovah. And it's from a particular psalm that calls upon God's creation to worship Him. The hills, the mountains, the valleys, the land, the ocean, the stars, the sky, the heavens. And that's exactly what they do. In their own way, they declare the glory of God and they praise His name simply by being in existence. It's magnificent. So we're talking in the series about this question, which takes more faith. We know that there's an old answer and that there is a new answer. We know the new answer comes because people didn't like the old answer. We're told the old answer is simply based on blind faith. We're told that it doesn't take, we have no evidence that we believe things in God, the Bible, simply because we want to believe them. But I hope, again, as we go through this series, that you'll see that's just not the case. That we agree that our answer, our view of how all this came about is a position of faith. But it's a position of faith that takes a step off a mountain, a Mount Everest of evidence. We should never hear a Christian say something like this, well, yeah, I just believe it because that's the way I grew up. I just believe it because I want to believe it. That's not the Christian faith. That's not what you have to rely on. We should never hear that. On the other hand, we are told that the new answer is positioned based on 100% facts and hard scientific evidence. And I hope that you see that that's not true. That it's a theory and it is based on faith. There's a lot of things that we've looked at that they simply believe without any type of evidence, without any type of science. There's a type of blind faith in that position. For example, the Big Bang. Are we really to believe that this explosion could lead to what we see in our universe? And not only that, but they believe that this explosion not only happened, but it had no cause. As we talked about last time, they have no answers to what caused that explosion that supposedly brought about all of this in the universe. That's not a position of 100% facts. That is based on faith. And like I said, so often they simply start in the middle and don't look at the beginning. So, as we've talked about many times, that new answer takes the position much like the Pharisees, who said of Jesus casting out demons, he does it by the power of Satan. Does that make any sense? No. But what else are they going to say when they've closed the door to any other answer? And I want our young people to know that's exactly what has happened. When they say that the new answer is based on 100% scientific evidence and facts, and that it's a fact itself, what else are they going to say? But how easy it is to say it when you've closed the door to any other possibility. When you won't even consider a debate of the evidence considering the other door, the other answer. They don't have to come up with solid theories, solid evidence. They have no one in opposition to them. They've gotten rid of the opposition. Isn't that exactly what the Pharisees figured out that they had to do with Jesus? They had to get rid of him so that there would be no other side, no opposition. I love these passages, and there's so many of them, that talk about God's creation and what it says about God. Its magnificence, its beauty. One of them is like Isaiah 40, verse 26, in which we read, "Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars. The one who leads forth their hosts by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing." We are still awestruck when we look at the heavens, aren't we? Well, the big thing in the current events is what? We just landed a new rover on Mars. And we're all excited about that, and that is exciting. To again explore a little more of a part of a planet, that part of that area that we haven't explored yet. But we all know the whole thing about it is that it's all about finding life on that planet. Will they ever find life on another planet like Mars? Well, I don't know, but my guess would be they're going to find it. They're going to find some type of evidence that they call life. It won't be sustained life, meaning it won't be alive now, but it's some type of evidence that they'll say, well, this is evidence that there was life here on Mars millions of years ago. I believe that they'll find something because they want to find it so bad. But let me ask you this. If we did find some type of evidence of life on some other planet, would that destroy our faith in God? Should that change our view of creation? Absolutely not. If God can create and sustain life on this planet, why couldn't He do it on another planet? And I want us to have that confidence. I want us to know. But Brother Brett, they say this. Of course they say that. What else are they going to say? I love this. It says He calls them all by name. Not one of them is missing. It kind of reminds me of the words of Jesus in His prayer in John 17, where He talks about not losing any of His followers, not losing any of His believers. Just like the stars. Or let's look at Psalm 8, verse 1, and then we're going to connect verses 3 and 4 to it. So Psalm 8, 1, 3, and 4, where the psalmist writes these words. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is Thy name in all the earth, who has displayed Thy splendor above the heavens. When I consider Thy heavens, the work of Thy fingers, the moon and the stars which Thou hast ordained, what is man, that Thou dost take thought of him, and the Son of Man, that Thou dost care for him? This gets to that whole idea that we still feel today, that when you look beyond this planet, when you look at space and the universe, the stars, the planets, especially as we're able to do now from satellites and rockets and spaceships, looking at it from space, Earth bound, we look at it and we see that Earth is such a small planet when compared to the universe or the universes, the galaxies that are out there in existence. In fact, we're not the biggest planet. We're not the smallest. But then consider this little planet and the billions of lives that live on it. And yet God knows the very hairs on our head and can count them. The psalmist is talking about a thought as how great God is because we're so small and insignificant, and yet He has treated us completely the opposite. He wants to hear from us. He wants a personal relationship with us. What a great God we have of love and majesty. Is that your God? So what we're going to do for just a few moments this morning is we're going to look at the science of astronomy. We're going to look at the telescope and see what the universe can teach us. We're able today, with the technology and the telescopes we have today, to see things that Charles Darwin never could imagine, never could see, never could draw conclusions from. In fact, our telescopes are so powerful, you don't even need to be in the observatory anymore. It's all on computers, and it's just so advanced, and just about any scientist anywhere could have access to it. It's incredible. But what I want to talk to you about is what's called the Theanthropic Principle. The Theanthropic Principle. And basically what this principle is that when you look at the universe, you look at the stars and the planets and you calculate all that out, what you find is that we have a universe that is fine-tuned. It's not a mess. It's not disorganized. It's fine-tuned. And you're going to hear me say this over and over, as you already have heard me said, because this is the whole crux of the evidence. That when we look at this universe, we look at this world, when we look at everything around us, we see order, complexity, design. It is all fine-tuned. It's at the right place at the right time, doing the right things to create life and to sustain that life. The evidence from astronomy is that we live in a fine-tuned, well-organized, well-designed galaxy. What is more reasonable? To believe that an explosion that had no cause brought all this about? Or an intelligent designer? Norman Geisler and Frank Turek, in their book, and I love the title of this book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, say of the Theanthropic Principle, this is the most powerful argument for the existence of God. Because, think about how long space has been in existence and how little we know about it. When you consider the vastness of it. And again, because of the fine-tuned, well-designed, organized universe we see. And so what happens in this anthropic principle is basically we take what is in existence, we start in the middle, and we put math to it. And we throw math into it, and we start with the presupposition that something can come from nothing. Somehow this came into existence. Again, science cannot answer that. The Bible does. And it throws math as to the chance that all this would exist. And so what we're told is that the chances of the universe coming into existence is 1 in 138th power, or to the 138th power. I don't know what that number is, but that's an astronomically big, almost impossible number. Just taking into consideration the number of atoms in the entire universe. How many atoms it would take to create and sustain life is lower than this number, is 1 or 10 to the 70th power. But what we're talking about is that we're talking about numbers that bring it to basically miraculous chances that this would happen. So what we understand is that there are basically what they have found 122 variables that would have to line up in precise values in order for our universe to come into existence. So let me put it this way. 122 different variables had to line up in the right way, in the right place, at the right time for our universe to come into existence. But it's not just come into existence. It has to be sustained. Something can come into existence and then get destroyed. It's not just that it all comes in existence, but it's something that has to be sustained. It lasts. And we are told that if any of those variables, just one, not multiple, just one, if any of those were off by 1 part in a millionth, matter would not have been able to coalesce, to come about, to exist, to survive. Do you see what we're talking about? We're talking about a miracle. That's what the math brings out in all this. Mark Clark, in his book, The Problem of God, says, the mathematical chances of our universe ever coming into existence are so tiny that they are at the level of the miraculous. That's not what our young people are told. we're told we don't have any evidence. We're told we're ridiculous to believe an intelligent designer. But I ask you, what takes more faith? That this came about by an uncaused explosion? I mean, how many explosions do you know result in design, complexity, and organization? None. They result in chaos. Things fly all over the place. But this uncaused explosion, our young people are told, is the start of our world, universe, our planet, and life. Dr. Stephen Hawking even addressed this, an atheist himself. Says, if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million millionths, the universe would have recollapsed before it ever reached its present size into a hot fireball. See, it's not just coming into existence, it's what? It's surviving. I think about this 122 variables. Like when you look at NASA sending these rockets, sending the space shuttle into space, right? You think about all the things that have to go on and have to line up and have to be set and have to be ready to launch that rocket into space. And you all have seen it, where they go, give me a go, no go for launch, right? And they go through all the different systems. Go, 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 go. Operation go. Fuel go. If any one of those is a no, no launch. Weather, go. All of those systems, all those variables have to be intact, working at the right time, the right place, and the right way for that rocket to take off. But we look at those launch and what? We see a bunch of intelligence. It takes a bunch of intelligence to create that rocket, to make it take off of that launch pad, to fly and sustain itself. And even in that, sometimes our intelligence has led to destruction, to error, to death, to imperfection. But we are told it's very reasonable to believe an uncaused explosion brought all this into existence. What else are they going to say when they close the door to every other answer? Young people, you've got to know it. Put confidence in your faith. Paul says in Colossians 1:16 and 17, for by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created by him and for him. That's the easy answer, isn't it? And as we look at the universe, that's exactly what we see. But notice verse 17, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. In him all things hold together. They sustain. They continue on. And so let's close this morning by looking at God's incredible design. Let's now go from the universe to that one planet we live on. The one planet that we know, at least at this point, that not only is there life, but life continues. Life is sustained. Human life, animal life, plant life, micro life. Even in those simple cell organisms, as we look at them, we're seeing complexity, organization. So let's see what it would take, and I'm giving this on a very facial level. We could go so much deeper. The marvelous combination of factors on earth to support life. You ready? Number one, it had to be in the proper place in the galaxy to sustain life. That might be one of the reasons we have trouble finding life on another planet. Number two, it had to have the proper kind of star, the sun. Think about that sun. It's just the right kind of star we need to sustain life. But not only that, we had to be at the proper distance from the sun. Any closer, we'd burn up. Further away, we'd freeze. It just so happens that we have the right kind of star. We're the proper distance from it, but that's not the only factor. We have to have the proper mass in our planet, which we do. We have to have the proper spin and the proper tilt as a planet. Again, if any one of these factors is off by 1 millionth or 100th millionth, no life. We have to have the proper magnetic field. We have what we call the atmosphere, right? We always hear about the rockets coming back into the Earth's atmosphere and how dangerous that is and how precise it has to be. We have this lock in the universe where things that could destroy life are kept out, things that sustain life keep in. That's incredible. Here's the rotation around the sun. Notice the tilt. Notice the spin. In great order. Great design. Finely tuned. Every year. The same. What's more reasonable, brothers and sisters in Christ? Young people? An uncaused explosion led to this? Or intelligent design? Earth is a big planet to some. Venus, Mars, Mercury, Pluto. Here's where all of our attention is right now, right? Earth much bigger than Mars. Remember we talked about the size, the mass of the planet is important, but look at it compared to all the others. Here's Earth. Here's Jupiter. Saturn. We're kind of right in the middle, right? But that's exactly where we need to be. To not only have life, but to sustain life. Which is more reasonable? You see, the thing is, if you brought up something like this to a college professor, what are they going to do? Well, one, they're going to ridicule you, that you're just a teenage student. You don't know what you're talking about. They're the PhD. Isn't that a great argumentation? You always tear down the opposition. You call them names. And the second thing, what they're going to do is they're going to throw out all the science on you. Make you feel so dumb, feel so little. But that won't change any of the facts of what we just talked about. You see, the key element in science, everything else that shows order, complexity, design, being fine-tuned, everything else, intelligence. But when it comes to the origin of life, it's the one answer, it's the one door, they just won't open. I ask you, is it based on evidence? Is that the view they're holding because of the evidence clearly shows it? Or is it based on bias? Content. It's content. Because when you open that other door, you open God, you open up the Bible, and they don't like the content of that book. I want our young people to know that there's incredible evidence here on earth, out in space. I want you, next time you look at the stars and you look at space, maybe tonight, you're probably like me, you got an app on your phone for stargazing, right? It's incredible. You look up there and it tells you all the different planets that you could see when you can see them. The stars and all their different formations and patterns. They give you these notifications, what's happening tonight. Full moon tonight. Go check it out. And I want you to do that. And I want you to just be awestruck with all of it. And as God said in Genesis 1:31, as He looked at all He created, and God saw all that He had made, and behold, it was very good. I think God was being very humble there. It's not only very good, it's magnificent. It's beautiful. It's beyond this world. We think we've done some cool things in this world. Sending a man to the moon, exploring the planets through rockets and satellites, exploring Mars with rovers. Those are some big things, big accomplishments. But I want to tell you, the one that created it, now that's even more magnificent and more powerful. I want you to know it's very good. It's magnificent. It's beautiful. And if I have to be a fool for Christ, a fool for God to believe in it, then I'm going to have to be. But I see the evidence for it, and I hope you do too. Because you're going to be attacked for it. You need to be ready. Thank you so much.